thought it'd be smart kind of to jump to this little fella. Look at this little fella, this guy right here. Remember, he had a thing or two to say about Afghanistan. Yay, nice job, 500 loops. Motang. Thank you, Deanne. Thanks so much. If you'll recall, this young fella right here, he was, why is my thing's all dark? It's just terrible. Why is it such a thing? That over the last, I guess 3 days, everybody seems to have forgotten all the conversations about everything leading up to the Afghan withdrawal. Like, it just did, like, we're just gonna pretend like we haven't been doing this shit for years, and we're gonna forget that here you go. Let's hear the man himself talk about this, because I'm curious, you're curious. What does he have to say about Afghanistan? This is from his, this isn't even a long time ago. This is just from Wellington, Ohio. This is just a few weeks ago.
Afghanistan, how about that? Worse than Afghanistan, where, by the way, I started the process. All the troops are coming back home. They couldn't stop the process. 21 years is enough, don't we think? 21 years. They couldn't stop the process. They wanted to, but it was very tough to stop the process when other things are at. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a shame. 21 years by a government that wouldn't last. The only way they last is if we're there. What are we going to say? We'll stay for another 21 years, then we'll stay for another 50. The whole thing is ridiculous. So we're bringing our troops back home from Iraq. We're bringing the troops back home,
aren't we?
From Afghanistan.
It's just adorable.
We brought them back home from Syria. Remember the thousands of troops we had on the border with Syria? Remember that?
Yeah, I remember where you left the Kurds to die. Just for the record, he's only said it that one time though.
Recent reports that the United States is planning to reduce the number of troops in Afghanistan have raised concerns that U.S. plans for...
This is from 2019. If you'll remember that year, it was pre-COVID, so a lot of us have wiped it from memory.
A withdrawal could weaken Kabul's hand in the peace talks. Asked about Afghanistan Wednesday, Trump questioned U.S. involvement in that conflict.
Why isn't Russia there? Why isn't India there? Why isn't Pakistan there? Why are we there? We're 6,000 miles away.
Trump said the 9-year war...
But I'm sure that everybody we listen to, in the punditry class, and by the way, we got a little bit of Michael Lindell today as well, and some Sidney Powell for good measure, but why aren't they playing these clips on Fox right now?
The Soviet Union fought in Afghanistan in the 1980s.
What clip is this from? VOA News? What's... Very original America.
It was justified because the terrorists from that country were entering the Soviet territory.
It didn't work. Why do... That's pretty anticlimactic, man. Don't play the video. Send them the good clip where I put the thing down in the thing and it goes soup. Like that. I don't know why mortars say soup, but it makes me hungry.
And causing unrest. But he said the war has bankrupted the former Soviet Union and caused its collapse.
I don't know, those vehicles look fine.
Questioned the purpose of further U.S. spending on Afghanistan.
General Mattis thanked me profusely for getting him $700 billion. He couldn't believe it. General Mattis thanked me even more the following year when I got him $716 billion. He couldn't believe it. But what's he done for me? How has he done in Afghanistan? Not too good.
Trump also criticized some of the U.S. military...
Not too good. I wanted to just cut and run.
...strategy in Afghanistan.
Why won't we cut and run? Why can't we just cut and run?
Afghanistan.
We have an area that I brought up with our generals 4 or 5 weeks ago where Taliban is here, ISIS is here, and they're fighting each other. I said, why don't you let them fight? Why are we getting in the middle of it?
What did I do? What did they order? I'm like, hey, for bada bing.
I said, let them fight. They're both our enemies. Let them fight. Sir, we want to do it. They go in and they end up fighting both of them. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
It's wacky.
Trump said U.S. military...
by the way, I'm going to go out on a limb and go, Trump did not actually understand the words that were being said in that gathering. just to clarify.
Plans should not be made public and available to the enemy. U.S. officials met with Taliban.
His thing was, let's leave without telling anybody, which is a little difficult for your allies that you're supposedly listen to me, supposedly going to negotiate a route out of the country, or you're going to start airlifting. You don't think they're going to notice certain families disappearing from every apartment block? By the way, one of the things that sticks out about this whole conversation with me that I've heard multiple times, like, oh my God, these are the people that helped us, and we're leaving them behind. Well, no, we're not. We're working on giving the people who were translators or worked directly with coalition forces a way out. They've been doing this for weeks. They're still in the process of doing it. But the folks that were like clinging to the wheels of the airplane when they took off, those aren't translators that were stiffing. Those are all, first of all, they're all men. Secondly, where are the conversations I keep hearing right next to that about how all these people are now worried their neighbors are going to tell the Taliban they helped them? Well, if everybody in Kabul or any of these other cities is on the team,
Taliban representatives last month in the United Arab Emirates in an effort to arrange peace talks between the warring sides. A spokesman for U.S. and NATO forces in Afghanistan said there is a good chance of ending decades of fighting in Afghanistan this year.
2019 brings a special and unique opportunity in Afghanistan. I think we've all seen the progress of peace talks, and the Afghans and the Taliban have a real serious opportunity ahead of them, an opportunity for peace.
A peace agreement would
not so much.
Would effectively end 40 years of warring in Afghanistan. Zlarica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Okay, so that's Trump blitzing out about this is the same thing, I think. I'm pretty sure.
And it was supposed to be a very short hit, and a hit on ISIS, but it didn't work out that way. They never left, and they've been there for many, many years. And
wait, is that his explanation for friggin'... Wait. Huh? Was that his explanation for what happened in... Run that by me again.
Well, we've been in Syria for a long time.
Oh, Syria, okay. Trump doubles down on decision...
And it was supposed to be a very short hit, and a hit...
Okay, so that's the Syrian stuff. That's stuff. But let's see, knowing that Trump just a couple of weeks ago was telling everybody he set up the plan to get out, and there's no way to avoid it. You can't do it. They wanted to stop it. They can't. It's already happening. Let's see here. Let's see what Fox has to say.
Have taken control of the Kabul airport following the chaos.
Well, no, they split it with our military. They took the civilian side. We've cordoned off.
That's been unfolding for hours as thousands attempt to flee the Taliban.
President Biden placing the blame on former President Trump, saying, quote, "When I came to office, I inherited a deal cut by my predecessor. I was the fourth president to preside over an American troop presence in Afghanistan. I would not and will not pass this war on to a fifth." But
I know that sounds strange to you, but this guy right here says it was
large scale, has the strongest gun laws in the country. They even say the strongest gun laws in the world. And yet people are being shot by the thousands every year. Worse than Afghanistan. How about that? Worse than Afghanistan, where, by the way, I started the process. All the troops are coming back home. They couldn't stop the process. 21 years is enough, don't we think? 21 years. They couldn't stop the process.
It's 2021. He thinks it's been 2020. Never mind. This is another 1917, 1918 moment for
They
him.
wanted to, but it was very tough to stop the process when other things are out. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a shame. 21 years by a government that wouldn't last. The only way they last is if we're there. What are we going to say? We'll stay for another 21 years, then we'll stay for another 50. The whole thing is ridiculous. So we're bringing our troops back home from Iraq. We're bringing the troops back home from Afghanistan.
Well, not so much. I mean, the Iraqi troops a lot of them got sent, like the Syrian troops. They got sent to Saudi Arabia to guard oil wells and refineries. Let's see. By the way, that's precisely what Trump just said. That's what Biden said at the beginning of it. And he's like, I'm not going to pass up on this opportunity. We're done.
Isn't it a little too late to be pointing fingers? Joining us now to react.
A little too late to be pointing? It's never too late to be pointing fingers. You mean early?
Fox News contributor Lara Trump. Lara, look.
It's Lara Trump. Yeah, I'm glad they have experts on.
This has been a completely bipartisan effort that people across, all aisles of the political
I see a needle being thread.
Spectrum wanted the removal of troops from Afghanistan. That is not the argument. What is in question here is how this was done, the execution of a supposed plan that doesn't even seem like there was a plan in place at this point.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It does not seem like there was any plan.
No.
We left the Afghan people high and dry. We left Americans in the region high and dry. People at our embassy had to be airlifted out on a helicopter, a military helicopter, even though Joe Biden not too long ago said we're never going to see that happen. And maybe he forgot, ladies, but last time I checked, as of January 20th of this year, Joe Biden is the president of the United States.
Well, that's progress. Let's just take a moment to celebrate that. That's like she finally came around. She's finally admitting that her father-in-law is not president. That's just nice.
Is ultimately the person that has the.
Hold on. Does this sound good to you guys? Hold on. No, it doesn't. Why is that? Okay. Hold on. I have to add something to the thing. Add a sound source. It's always fun. Add a source. There we go. Dream mix. Let's see. No, I don't want to do that. Do I? Let's see. I'm fixing something live. Give me 1 second. Dunk. Because this should be in there. Add. It's fixing a hole where the way seeps it and stops my mind from wandering where I will go. All right, I'll fix it later. Never mind. Okay, sorry. Momentary. Back to hi. How are you? Welcome. Hello. How are you? I'm fine. All right.
The ability to make these decisions. So, of course, we don't want to be in endless wars. That is something that my father-in-law, President Trump, always talked about. But you have to strategically do these things, and you don't want to create a vacuum.
Wait, so there wasn't a plan in place already for May 1st that would have worked? Why not? You mean adding 3 months to the May 1st deadline? That's not... All right.
In a place like Afghanistan, now what has happened, it's not just that the Taliban has taken over a city, they have taken over an entire country. And in the eyes of terrorist organizations around the world, in the eyes of our adversaries around
they can all go to Afghanistan and corral themselves
the
there.
world, like China, Iran, Russia, think about how weak this makes the United States look. There is one thing that these terrorist organizations recognize, and it is strength.
Right. And so, like, you mean like they recognize strength, like the strength of the resolve to get out of Afghanistan, come what may, take the hits as they come and just kind of do it? Or you mean the kind of strength like your father-in-law had, which is just keep punting it? That kind of strength? The strength to not do it when you can.
There's a reason that not once while President Trump was in office
did he actually end the conflict in Afghanistan.
Was there a terrorist attack on American soil? Not.
Yeah. He was president on January 6th. I'm just saying.
Once did we get into any new wars, and there were.
Well, we've been in Syria for a long time, and it was supposed to be a very short hit, and a hit on ISIS, but it didn't work out that way. They never left, and they've been there for many, many years. And we are We were down to very few soldiers in Syria. We had 50 in the region that you're talking about, 50 soldiers, and they've been already moved out. But we'll see what happens with respect to a lot of different things. It's always a firm decision. Last time I made a firm decision, and I said we'll do it over a period of time. And we've been doing this actually over a period of time, over a very long period of time.
Yeah, I made a firm decision to drag this shit out forever.
Military morale was through the roof. It's because Donald Trump exuded strength. They knew that he would fight back if he was pushed. Now Joe Biden is just letting them overrun a country. It is shameful. It's embarrassing.
Letting them overrun a country? Letting them. So we're supposed to stay there until that's no longer a possibility. Okay.
For the United States, Joe Biden owns this just like he owns the...
Yes, he does. I'm fine with him owning it. It's going to be ugly right now because it was always going to be ugly. And that's where we are. That's what it is. And by Thanksgiving, these assholes won't even remember what they were screaming about in August.
Disaster on our southern border, skyrocketing inflation, and COVID going through the roof because of the illegal immigrants he's letting flow.
Oh, I see. Right. That's the idea that we have Delta variant, which came to the United States from India via the UK because of Guatemalan people seeking asylum.
Over our southern border.
Here is former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on this very subject. Take a listen.
I don't speak gin and cookies, so I might need a translator on this.
It looks like the Biden administration has just failed in its execution of its own plan. It also looks like there's a bit of panic having to reinsert soldiers to get them out. This did not happen on our watch. We reduced our forces significantly. The Taliban didn't advance on capitals all across Afghanistan.
What'd you give them? What'd you give them so they didn't advance? I'm curious. Let's see. Let's get this thing. Let's see. Maybe we'll look up. Let's see. What is it? Trump. That should work. Something like this. What happened on your watch? What was the thing that happened on your watch? Anything? That's okay. Okay.
Do you think, Lara, and I know former President Trump...
No, she doesn't. I know the answer to that question. She does not think. But please continue.
...wanted troops out of the region, but do you think that this situation proves that the U.S. does need to be a stabilizing force in Afghanistan for...
Oh, boy. Here comes the bear trap.
...for our own personal safety here at home?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously not a Middle Eastern expert, but...
Well, that hasn't stopped you up till now.
I do think that that's been the role of the United States in many places around the world throughout history, to be a stabilizing force. We cannot ever allow terrorist organizations to get a stronghold like they now have over an entire country. So, of course, again, we all want to see our troops out. We never want to see...
we all want to see our troops out, says the woman who didn't serve and has no family members that serve, and whose father-in-law didn't serve. Bone spurs, I think it was.
People in harm's way unnecessarily,
but this is necessary. We need to necessarily put our people in harm's way.
It sure would have been nice not to let them overthrow any of our military bases, take our, all of our military equipment, and
they didn't.
Now overrun an entire country, because you've seen now the terrorist threat.
They took Afghan government gear, and they don't know how to operate it.
To Americans here at home has gone up because of this. So let's see what happens. But I hope the...
Yeah, let's see what happens. You know, I mean, I'm no Middle Eastern expert, but I don't know.
Biden administration shows at least a little bit of strength here.
Laura, we have about a minute left, but are you surprised we have not heard directly from the president or vice president at this point?
Biden gave a speech today. They were preparing it and actually dealing with the actual governance.
Absolutely. You know, Joe Biden is on vacation at Camp David while the Middle
Yeah, it looks like a vacation.
East is crumbling, while, you know, all of this is going on. And it's really shocking to see. Where is Joe Biden? Where is Kamala Harris?
Where is he? Where has it been? Where did he go? Where is the leadership?
When they are needed? Well,
Oh, by the way, where is he? Where's the... Hold on. Where? Oh.
What that means.
Congresswoman Liz Cheney there on ABC This Week yesterday, talking a bit about the Trump administration and specifically...
Good afternoon.
Oh, there he is.
I want to speak today to the unfolding situation in Afghanistan, the developments that have taken place in the last week, and the steps we're taking to address the rapidly evolving events. My national security team and I have been closely monitoring the situation on the ground in Afghanistan.
You know, doing the work.
And moving quickly to execute the plans we had put in place to respond to every constituency, including and contingency, including the rapid collapse we're seeing now. I'll speak more in a moment about the specific steps we're taking, but I want to remind everyone how we got here and what America's interests are in Afghanistan. We went to Afghanistan almost 20 years ago with clear goals.
I'm sorry, President Biden, but Trump said it was 21 years, and we all live on Trump time right now. So you'll need to adjust your calendar. Also, apparently the clocks were off in the picture you posted earlier where you were talking to people, because they're not off if you factor in where you are, but they were off for people who wanted them to be something they weren't.
Goals. Get those who attacked us on September 11th, 2001, and make sure al-Qaeda could not use Afghanistan as a base from which to attack us again. We did that. We severely degraded al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We never gave up the hunt for Osama bin Laden, and we got him. That was a decade ago. Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. It was never supposed to be creating a unified, centralized democracy. Our only vital national interest in Afghanistan,
because there can't be one, because Afghanistan is not a real country. That's my 2 cents.
Remains today what it has always been: preventing a terrorist attack on America's homeland. I've argued for many years that our mission should be narrowly focused on counterterrorism, not counterinsurgency or nation building. That's why I opposed the surge when it was proposed in 2009 when I was vice president. And that's why, as president, I'm adamant we focus on the threats we face today in 2021, not yesterday's threats. Today, the terrorist threat has metastasized well beyond Afghanistan. Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, al-Nusra in Syria, ISIS attempting to create a caliphate in Syria and Iraq, and establishing affiliates in multiple countries in Africa and Asia. These threats warrant our attention and our resources. We conduct effective counterterrorism missions against terrorist groups in multiple countries where we don't have permanent military presence. If necessary, we'll do the same in Afghanistan. We've developed counterterrorism over-the-horizon capability that will allow us to keep our eyes firmly fixed on the direct threats to the United States and the region, and act quickly and decisively if needed. When I came into office, I inherited a deal that President Trump negotiated with the Taliban. Under his agreement, U.S. forces would be out of Afghanistan by May 1, 2021. Just a little over 3 months after I took.
By the way, somebody just texted, and I've seen a bunch of this, like military-industrial complex stuff, all that. I don't know the point when we're getting out of someplace. The goal of the military-industrial complex, in theory, would be for us to stay forever and expand our locations in places, set up more bases so that they could sell more shit to populate those bases as far as gear and whatnot. This would, in theory, be an affront to said military-industrial complex, just for the record.
Took office.
It's why we went in. Why we went in was because there were terrorist camps in Afghanistan, and the Bush administration had a list of countries they wanted to go after because of control of Mideast oil. The military-industrial complex is an ancillary aspect of this particular fight. It's much more, the military-industrial complex is much more involved in things like the Cold War, which feeds it. But there you go.
U.S. forces had already drawn down during the Trump administration from roughly 15,500 American forces to 2,500 troops in country. And the Taliban was at its strongest militarily since 2001. The choice I had to make as your president was either to follow through on that agreement or be prepared to go back to fighting the Taliban in the middle of the spring fighting season. There would have been no ceasefire after May 1. There was no agreement protecting our forces after May 1. There was no status quo of stability without American casualties after May 1. There was only the cold reality of either following through on the agreement to withdraw our forces or escalating the conflict and sending thousands more American troops back into combat in Afghanistan, lurching into the third decade of conflict. I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. That's why we're still there. We were clear-eyed about the risks. We planned for every contingency, but I always promised the American people that I would be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves. We spent over $1 trillion. We trained and equipped an Afghan military force with some 300,000 strong, incredibly well equipped, a force larger in size than the militaries of many of our NATO allies. We gave them every tool they could need. We paid their salaries.
And by the way, on the down low, we will be drone striking and strafe bombing storages of those things, whether it shows up on our news or not. Just letting you know.
Provided for the maintenance of their Air Force, something the Taliban doesn't have. Taliban does not have an Air Force.
They don't have any pilots either. That's why they dance around the helicopters they found and like, how the fuck do we get this thing off the ground?
We provided close air support. We gave them every chance to determine their own future. What we could not provide them was the will to fight for that future. There's some very brave and capable Afghan special forces units and soldiers. But if Afghanistan is unable to mount any real resistance to the Taliban now, there is no chance that 1 year, 1 more year, 5 more years, or 20 more years of U.S. military boots on the ground would have made any difference. Here's what I believe to my core. It is wrong to order American troops to step up when Afghanistan's own armed forces would not. If the political leaders of Afghanistan were unable to come together for the good of their people, unable to negotiate for the future of their country when the chips were down. They would never have done so while U.S. troops remained in Afghanistan, bearing the brunt of the fighting for them.
By the way, the description of the reality over there that parallels what Biden is saying and what Trump said in his assessment, because that's exactly what the generals were telling him too, and what time on the ground and experience will tell you if you look to that place. That the difference is not the reality on the ground or the ability to describe that reality clearly. It's what you do with that information. Trump punted it into his second term and gave himself wiggle room in case he just decided to blow it off. Biden added 3 months to start the process, to start getting the civs out, the people who helped us, and then went through with it, even though it sucks. That's the difference. Two people see exactly the same circumstance. One of them acts on that circumstance and solves it. The other one blows it off or makes it someone else's problem.
And our true strategic competitors, China and Russia, would love nothing more than the United States to continue to funnel billions of dollars in resources and attention into stabilizing Afghanistan indefinitely. When I hosted President Ghani and Chairman Abdullah at the White House in June, and again when I spoke by phone to Ghani in July, we had very frank conversations. We talked about how Afghanistan should prepare to fight their civil wars after the U.S. military departed, to clean up the corruption in government so the government could function for the Afghan people. We talked extensively about the need for Afghan leaders to unite politically. They failed to do any of that. I also urged them to engage in diplomacy, to seek a political settlement with the Taliban. This advice was flatly refused. Mr. Ghani insisted the Afghan forces
who fled the country yesterday
would fight. But obviously he was wrong. So I'm left again to ask of those who argue that we should stay, how many more generations of America's daughters and sons would you have me send to fight Afghanistan's civil war when Afghan troops will not? How many more lives, American lives, is it worth? How many endless rows of headstones at Arlington National Cemetery?
Thanks,
I'm clear on my answer. I will not repeat the mistakes we've made in the past. Mistake of staying and fighting indefinitely in a conflict that is not in the national interest of the United States, of doubling down on a civil war in a foreign country, of attempting to remake a country through the endless military deployments of U.S. forces. Those are the mistakes we cannot continue to repeat because we have significant vital interest in the world that we cannot afford to ignore. I also want to acknowledge how painful this is to so many of us. The scenes we're seeing in Afghanistan, they're gut-wrenching, particularly for our veterans, our diplomats, humanitarian workers, for anyone who has spent time on the ground working to support the Afghan people, for those who have lost loved ones in Afghanistan, and for Americans who have fought and served in the country, serve our country in Afghanistan. This is deeply, deeply personal. It is for me as well. I've worked on these issues as long as anyone. I've been throughout Afghanistan during this war, while the war was going on, from Kabul to Kandahar to the Kunar Valley. I've traveled there on 4 different occasions. I met with the people. I've spoken to the leaders. I spent time with our troops. And I came to understand firsthand what was and was not possible in Afghanistan. So now we're focused on what is possible. We will continue to support the Afghan people. We will lead with our diplomacy, our international influence, and our humanitarian aid. We'll continue to push for regional diplomacy and engagement to prevent violence and instability. We'll continue to speak out for the basic rights of the Afghan people, of women and girls, just as we speak out all over the world. I've been clear.
Now, can somebody tell me why we're not invading countries that Boko Haram is in? Just straight up invading them? I mean, we have anti-terrorism forces, and we work with our NATO allies and the UN, and we go after them where it matters. And there was a whole big hashtag, bring back our girls, that went around. But nobody was calling for us to invade the Congo or set up shop there forever to stabilize that government and drive them out. Are those girls worth less? Or is that how you deal with that problem when it's not your country?
Human rights must be the center of our foreign policy, not the periphery. But the way to do it is not through endless military.
Which, who has no natural resources? Afghanistan has rare earth minerals and, to some degree, I guess, oil. And obviously, poppies are a big, underlying element of the economy in the world. Especially, and not surprisingly, China and Russia.
Deployments. It's with our diplomacy, our economic tools, and rallying the world to join us. Let me lay out the current mission in Afghanistan. I was asked to authorize, and I did, 6,000 U.S. troops to deploy to Afghanistan for the purpose of assisting in the departure of U.S. and allied civilian personnel from Afghanistan, and to evacuate our Afghan allies and vulnerable Afghans to safety outside of Afghanistan. Our troops are working to secure the airfield and to ensure continued operation of both the civilian and military flights. We're taking over air traffic control. We have safely shut down our embassy and transferred our diplomats.
Think about that for a second. The United States of America is running air traffic control for the country of Afghanistan currently. That's not just planes taking off and leaving from Afghanistan. That's planes flying over Afghanistan.
Our diplomatic presence is now consolidated at the airport as well. Over the coming days, we intend to transport out thousands of American citizens who've been living and working in Afghanistan. We'll also continue to support the safe departure of civilian personnel, the civilian personnel of our allies who are still serving in Afghanistan. Operation Allies Refugee, which I announced back in July, has already moved 2,000 Afghans who are eligible for special immigration visas and their families to the United States. In the coming days, the U.S. military will provide assistance to move more SIV-eligible Afghans and their families out of Afghanistan. We're also expanding refugee access to cover other vulnerable Afghans who worked for our embassy. U.S. non-governmental agencies or U.S. non-governmental organizations and Afghans who otherwise are at great risk, in U.S. news agencies. I know there are concerns about why we did not begin evacuating Afghans civilians sooner. Part of the answer is some of the Afghans did not want to leave earlier, still hopeful for their country. And part of it because the Afghan government and its supporters discouraged us from organizing a mass exodus to avoid triggering, as they said, a crisis of confidence.
That was the thing I was talking about on Stuttering John's show about a bunch of people saying we should have negotiated a corridor for everybody to exit. Well, when? A week ago? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, they didn't own the country. This all happened in 9 days. And if you went to them and said, look, give us a corridor to get out, that's signaling to the Taliban you fully expect them to take over the whole country, giving them complete confidence and gutting what would have been the morale of the Afghan soldiers if there is any to lose. So nobody starts jumping off the Titanic until you've actually hit the iceberg.
American troops are performing this mission as professionally and as effectively as they always do. But it is not without risks. As we carry out this departure, we have made it clear to the Taliban, if they attack our personnel or disrupt our operation, the U.S. presence will be swift and the response will be swift and forceful. We will defend our people with devastating force if necessary. Our current military mission will be short in time, limited in scope, and focused in its objectives. Get our people and our allies as safely as quickly as possible. And once we have completed this mission, we will conclude our military withdrawal. We will end America's longest war after 20 long years of bloodshed. The events we're seeing now are sadly proof that no amount of military force would ever deliver a stable, united, secure Afghanistan, as known in history as the graveyard of empires. What's happening now could just...
By the way, it's not just the graveyard of empires. Like, again, I hear this mysticism talked about, this kind of mythical talk about Afghanistan being this, like, valiant, unfightable land. The reality is anybody who fights for it loses because they don't actually care enough. There's better resources to be had elsewhere. And after a while, everybody gives up and goes, what the fuck are we doing here? Including the Romans, the Russians, everybody. And the Russians, they got their ass kicked because we were giving the weapons to the Yusufzad and the Mujahideen.
This has easily happened 5 years ago or 15 years in the future. You have to be honest. Our mission in Afghanistan is taking many missteps, made many missteps over the past 2 decades. I'm now the 4th American president to preside over war in Afghanistan. 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. I will not pass this responsibility on to a 5th president. I will not mislead the American people by claiming that just a little more time in Afghanistan will make all the difference. Nor will I shrink from my share of responsibility for where we are today and how we must move forward from here. I am President of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me. I'm deeply saddened by the facts we now face. But I do not regret my decision to end America's warfighting in Afghanistan.
Oh, somebody in the chat said the Mongolian Khans couldn't hold it. The Mongolian Khans didn't want it. That's the thing. Why would you waste resources fighting for an arable land that has limited use and there's much better stuff to fight for and take? And by the way, the Khans eventually lost everything. So that was just part of it. One of the reasons why they lost everything was because they started doing adventurism into deserts.
Afghanistan and maintain a laser focus on our counterterrorism missions there and other parts of the world. Our mission to degrade the terrorist threat of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and kill Osama bin Laden was a success. Our decades-long effort to overcome centuries of history and permanently change and remake Afghanistan was not. And I wrote and believed it never could be. I cannot and will not ask our troops to fight on endlessly in another country's civil war, taking casualties, suffering life-shattering injuries, leaving families broken by grief and loss. This is not in our national security interest. It is not what the American people want. It is not what our troops, who have sacrificed so much over the past 2 decades, deserve. I made a commitment to the American people when I ran for president that I would bring America's military involvement in Afghanistan to an end.
T.W. Wheeler says rare earth minerals won't be needed soon anyways. Excellent point, and also probably part of the reason why we can afford to get out. That's a whole other conversation, but an astute view. Because once we move past lithium-ion batteries, which is probably 2 years away, nobody's going to want to hear from this shit anymore.
While it's been hard and messy, and yes, far from perfect, I've honored that commitment.
Which is, by the way, the title of my autobiography. Hard and messy and far from perfect. The Hal Sparks story.
More importantly, I made a commitment to the brave men and women who serve this nation that I wasn't going to ask them to continue to risk their lives in a military action that should have ended long ago. Our leaders did that in Vietnam when I got here as a young man. I will not do it in Afghanistan. I know my decision will be criticized, but I would rather take all that criticism than pass this decision on to another president of the United States, yet another one, a fifth one, because it's the right one, it's the right decision for our people, the right one for our brave service members who risk their lives serving our nation, and it's the right one for America. Thank you. May God protect our troops, our diplomats, and all brave Americans serving in harm's way.
I also got to say that just kind of like, I'm saying this and I'm not taking questions because there's no debate here. This is, you'll get the details, but life is happening. It's just like, goodbye. And again, I noticed some chit chat in the while we were running that in the chat room about that we have a couple of trolls in here. I want to thank the trolls for showing up. Without you, the show wouldn't spread. It would just be us, our little family here watching regularly and kind of in our little. We don't want to be in a bubble. We don't live that way over here. We like complexity, so we like having our the show shared across the interwebs. So. So thank you, trolls, because we're here because we want to be, and you'll never get your time back ever. And also you help us with the algorithm. So there you go. But let's see what, that was the statement by the president, the real one, the actual one. And let's see where he went, this is just going to suck, and we're going to get it, we're getting out, that's it. There's no good time to do it. There wouldn't be a good time 5 years ago, not 15 years from now. So I'm just doing it. Committed to doing it. We're following through. Done, done, done. The kind of leadership that people, on the right pretend to want. And then when they get it, they're like, what about the what? So let's hear what Lara has to say or finish her remarks.
This is sort of akin to what happened during the campaign, right? The media allowed Joe Biden to hide out in his basement for most of a campaign. Now they are allowing.
Oh, right. This is the whole, like, where is he still? She's still on that, I'll tell you where he was, Lara, in case you want to know. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing now, but he was meeting with his national security team, making decisions, looking at the details on the ground as they unfold, and preparing a speech to give to the nation about the process, wherein he did not go back on his decision. That's where he was, in case you were wondering.
Allowing him, I guess, to hide out at Camp David alongside his vice president, Kamala Harris. The American people need to hear from our leaders.
Well, they did, yeah.
That they have this situation under control. That
well, they do.
More Americans are not going to be put in harm's way, and that, gosh, there's a plan moving forward here. So I sure hope that they get in front of this. I think it's a little bit too late at this point, but rather shocking to not have heard from our president and vice president at this point.
All right, Lara Trump, thank you so much for speaking out this morning. We appreciate it very much.
That's an excellent point Leslie brings up. Biden did not get COVID. He has not had COVID. Trump did. But that whole hiding in the basement thing, which was what the rest of us were fucking doing, trying not to get COVID and give it to our loved ones, because we know that while we may have been safe from it, and there's no guarantee you would be, but this belief that if you don't have comorbidities and you're pretty healthy, that you could ride it out, the fact that you could carry it to people who aren't, loved ones and strangers alike, like an asshole, is one of the reasons a lot of us stayed home and participated in the lockdown, wore masks, while we still, we rolled straight into our mask game. Instead of like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? Like, fuck, find a cool mask and get about living.